So if your case is one of those cases, and it's somewhat rare, but it happens fairly often, I'd say probably about 10 or 15% of the time. What changes once a case has to go into litigation?
Okay. And I'm not going to go too much in this. I know
Okay.
we'll touch on this more.
I think Charlie talked about that the other day.
I think Charlie did talk about that a little bit. But I'll say the two things that we like to explain to clients when it goes into a litigation phase is that the two biggest things that are going to change are the client's participation and the timeline. So when I say client's participation, we talked about earlier today, the client is the source of most evidence. And that is certainly true when it gets into litigation. Okay, so there may be written interrogatories, which are written questions under oath that a client has to answer. And there may be requests for production for documents or any evidence that a client may have in their possession. So the client is going to be directly involved in answering those questions and providing that documentation. The client will also be physically required, well, maybe in a normal year, but physically required to come to a mediation, possibly come to a deposition, answer questions under oath. So their involvement is going to be greatly increased. And that could lead all the way to sitting in a box and testifying in front of a jury and a court. So the client involvement is increased dramatically, and then the other thing is the timeline is stretched dramatically as well. Litigation is basically it's formatted into deadlines, time limits, and everything like that. So whenever something is done, there's a certain amount of days before a response has to be done, and things have to be scheduled out. And when you bring into the fact that there are hundreds or thousands of other cases that are going through the same scheduling process, hearings, mediations, depositions, all of that can be pushed out due to scheduling conflicts. So the timeline may go from months to possibly even years of extending your case. So those are the two things that we like to make sure that a client knows just right out of the gate, if it's going into litigation, that their involvement is going to be increased and that the timeline is going to be stretched dramatically.
Yeah.
So, there's obviously lots of more ins and outs and risks involved with litigation and things like that, but those are the two that we always like to broach first as a subject when we're talking about possibly going into litigation, so that a client understands that it's going to directly change for them.